Hello, everyone. In this episode, we talked to Jonathon Wicks about his operator background, what parking is really all about, what the future holds, and how airports are innovating. My name is Lester Mascon, and this is Parker X. And today we're talking to
Jonathon Wicks with Walker Consultants. Hi, Lester.
How you doing? Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm good. So, we've known each other for a little while, and we'll kind of just jump right into it. But I don't think a lot of people understand your background. I remember hearing your name a lot and working with you a lot when you were at Walker, but like I didn't know you that well prior to that. Like I didn't know where your history was, but I think for people that are planning to work with you or people that know you from the consultant side really don't understand how much of an operations background you actually have.
Yeah, thank you. I was blessed to have that operating background, which really definitely informs. I try and inform my other fellow consultants and people at Walker and just people in the industry who maybe are coming from more of a technology background, but really parking starts with the operation. Parking is customer service, revenue collection, facility management. That's kind of the main three.
There's a very practical element to it.
Yeah. And there are steps to take to make sure that you have an operation or a facility that's running well. And sometimes those steps can be overlooked or forgotten about, and then you get into trouble. So some part of our business is auditing. But really coming from an operator background, I was fortunate enough to be hired out of college with ACE Parking. And so
What did you go to school for?
I was an English major. I majored in creative writing, so not anything business or parking related necessarily.
Crosses over. You're doing RFPs and all the writing you do now, so I guess that helps. Right?
A lot of writing now, and that's part of why when I submitted my resume to Walker Parking Consultants, then I got a call back because I had that writing background, because a lot of what we do is probably 50% field work, investigation, research, and 50% technical report writing, communicating what we found in the research intern to our client, but also as an owner's representative in RFPs and other processes, clearly communicating to the vendors what the owner's expectations are and what the getting them the best responses on an RFP process as possible.
So what was that first role out of?
Oh man. So I was 25 years old.
Okay.
Took me a little longer to graduate from school than others, but I was in Southern California enjoying myself, and 25.
Take it a little slow. It's
exactly.
Okay.
I wasn't in a hurry. I was not in a hurry. Was 25 years old in the fall of 2005, working at the Century Plaza Hotel in Century City. Yeah, so I was a shift manager, evening weekend manager, managing the valet operation for the largest ballroom in LA at that time. I don't know if there are others, certainly the largest on the west side.
So super low-key guests, right?
Oh man, yeah. A lot of weddings from the Westwood neighborhood in the Persian community. So I was the PM manager, and those weddings, we know that we'd be working until 4 or 5 in the morning. The bride might not show up till midnight. So,
really?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
And a huge ballroom full of thousands of people. So, event valet, people trickling in and then everyone wanting to leave at the end all at once. So valet can be tricky because you can have a lot of dead time. You have the peak ingress, the peak egress, the valets are moving cars, they're working, but certainly on an event basis, there could be hours at a time where they're not moving a single car, just standing around waiting for the event to exit. So I was 25, managing union valets who'd worked at that hotel longer than I'd been alive. Some of them, are really senior valets there. Local Teamsters union. They'd been working there 25 years. And here I was, some fresh out of college, first parking job. Who's this guy?
I bet they taught you a lot though.
They taught me a whole lot. And they taught me a lot about how to manage down as far as I'm getting corporate policies and procedures pushed on me. How do I effectively roll that out to the team in a way that isn't going to result in a backlash or retaliation, which sometimes happened at those events. But really trying to educate. And so even then, from that first position, there was an education process that this is why we're doing this. I understand you might not agree with it or be happy about it, but I'm trying to represent a particular goal or interest here. And really the end goal was for the client. So the Westin had just sold to Hyatt Regency. So Hyatt was the new flag there, new owner, new hotel, management. And of course it's revenue driven. They want to see profitability and have the customer service levels
it's
of
got to be a great
4 or 5 star resort. It was amazing. I learned so much. So I was there for about 8 months, and then I got promoted to my first location manager position, managing the Irvine Spectrum Center. This was 2006-ish, 2007. And
who were you working for then?
That was still with Ace Parking.
That was Ace Parking.
Yeah, I wound up working for Ace for about 8 or 9 years.
Okay.
And that was fun because Spectrum Centers changed a lot over the years. They don't do as much valet as they used to. But at that time, we still had 4 or 5 different valet stands kind of scattered around the mall. They didn't have the same office building development that they have now. They still had self-park garages, which I think they put Frog into eventually for some guidance. Even though it was free parking, they still had the guidance there at the mall.
I tell you, that education... Like when I first started in parking, it was a service technician.
Yeah.
And coming from an IT background and then working as a service technician and then actually doing the installations and then migrating to having to sit with the clients and actually help them like tune the software to achieve the goals that they wanted to.
Yeah.
Like that time and education was it's invaluable to me.
It is.
You'll never be able to rebuild it.
Yeah. Parking's a big puzzle and a big game of Tetris, really, especially with valet, the way that I think about it. And so every layer that you build, stacks on top of the next. So, having a knowledge of the basics and why it's important for a vehicle to be present on a loop in order for a ticket to be issued at an entry lane, understanding everything that goes into all of that is critical.
I used to try to jump up and down on the loop. It didn't work.
No? We'll just wait for the next car to come.
No doubt.
Follow them.
That's funny.
Yeah. So a lot of valet, a lot of hotel valet. From the Irvine Spectrum Center, I went to the W Hotel in Westwood and really got...
lots of high-end clientele. I mean, that's a very demanding...
Yeah. So I was fortunate. Ace had a great internal management training program. And then I had the fortune of, the W Hotel brand didn't want any possible distinguishing element for a hotel guest experience between the valet and the parking and everything that was going on inside of the hotel. So it was great training, great learning, great opportunities working with staff and educating them on what is service, anticipating needs, all of the service basics that now have really turned me into a bit of a service snob. But it's easy to tell when you're not getting good service. And it feels like it doesn't happen as much as it used to.
Yeah, especially in Southern California too, I feel like there really is an expectation that service is just going to be top notch everywhere you go. And when it's not, I mean, you notice it.
You do notice.
Yeah.
And I think that comes down to this whole idea of frictionless and seamless parking that we're experiencing now. It's not just level of service and customer service is coming from the equipment also. I mean, the equipment needs to be the appropriate application for that scenario in order to meet the end user's needs, but also from an ownership standpoint. How easy is it for them to receive reports for multiple properties, or how easy is it for ownership to understand their real-time occupancy usage and make data-based decisions? Everything's so data-driven now that if it's not available, then it doesn't exist,
It's interesting. So, I'm a huge fan of LPR, huge fan of moving things towards a frictionless, as close as we can get to this, just ease of use thing. I mean, figuring out gateless in some way.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple things I can't get my head around yet.
Yeah.
And it's more of the validation culture.
Sure.
So within most of these, you go to a big office building, you go to, a Westfield, a huge retail center.
Mm-hmm.
Like they want to make some money off parking, but it's really about leasing square footage and driving revenue through the facility. So the first thing they're giving away a lot of times is parking, or allowing these places to validate parking and all that.
Yeah.
So figuring out a way to be able to still provide validations, yet still move as frictionless as you can without giving some way. Like the roll-up person needs some way to identify their parking transaction, either to a piece of equipment, or they have to be given something that they have to carry around with them to be able to exit. So I haven't quite figured that out yet, what the best way to approach all that is, but it's getting closer every day.
Yeah, and I think what we're seeing is there are few or maybe very limited single providers that can achieve a complete solution with prepaid reservations and gated parks or gateless parks or LPR or AVI. I mean, there's still a number of different components that have, certainly with parking guidance and some of all of the mobile app movement to mobile that we're seeing. It's no longer, and 10 years ago, none of these devices, or maybe 15 years ago, none of these devices communicated amongst each other. And now you have to communicate with everybody. So it's, where are you breaking down that friction?
Yeah. You keep going back to the iPhone coming out in 07, 08. I mean, it's not been that long, right? And all of a sudden, all the changes happen in that short period.
And look at the pace of adoption of the iPhone. I mean, it's practically saturated. I think on their last earnings call for 2018, they said they didn't sell as many phones as they expected because everyone that wants one owns one, pretty much. You know,
they kind of came out with a lot in a short period of time. I think they might have had something to do with it too.
Well, maybe.
I mean, it was like, I feel like I had to 8 like last year. Now there's
exactly. And now they're so expensive. I was giving a lunch and learn on mechanical parking, robotic parking, and autonomous vehicles to an architecture firm when I was in Hawaii last week, before when we were speaking briefly. And, I think I spent as much on my most recent phone as I did on my first car.
I'm sure you're right.
Yeah. It's like, how did this get so expensive? I don't get it. But I think that's also some of the concern that we're getting from clients and owners of parking now. How has the technology evolved? It can be very expensive. It can be very complicated. Is it the right fit for their parking application? Because I think, and especially me coming from Walker, which is an architecture and an engineering firm, engineers tend to overcomplicate things sometimes, maybe unnecessarily so. So how can I, as a consultant within that environment, educate owners and say, okay, maybe there's a simpler application?
I think I've always found it's a little too much focus on the edge cases.
Yeah.
When you get too deep into it and trying to solve 100% of the problem instead of like 99.9%.
Yeah. We'll get you there.
Yeah.
We'll make it. We'll collect all the revenue. You'll get your payment.
So just to kind of wrap up on your kind of history piece. So how long with Walker now?
Been with Walker for 4.5 years, and came to Walker from the operator contract for the city of Beverly Hills. So really got a year's worth of experience with the city of Beverly Hills managing their operator contract, which was a lesson, again, another lesson in customer service from the municipal side, and
I think Chad's a good teacher too.
Fantastic teacher, good educator, very smart individual. And then just the residents and the citizens there, and even the tenants, the city of Beverly Hills has built a lot of parking garages, and they've provided ground floor retail, and they've done smart things as far as how
it's a really interesting city with as much real estate as they own, and how they I mean, you see all these movements now towards building parking structures with retail space around it. I mean, the city did that. Those garages were built back in the 60s.
Yeah.
And all those have retail around them.
Been doing that for
somebody
decades.
Was thinking.
Yeah. But, there's still towns where someone will have a parking complaint, and they'll call the mayor or the city council, and they'll pick up, and then that comes back on parking. You got to fix this today.
Every time.
Yeah. So, there's parking is important. It can serve a lot of needs, and I think it can help your cause too. I mean, you were talking a little bit earlier about kind of time on device, or what is the spend of a shopper. The faster you can get someone parked at an airport or a mall or a casino or a medical office or wherever they're going. I mean, no one parks to park, right? You're going somewhere else. You're always on your way to your next destination. So as quick as you can get them in and as easily as you can get them out and collect every dollar, that's the mission.
I've actually started writing this article about it, and it starts out as going, like, I don't want a parking experience. Like, I don't want an improved one. I don't want a better one. I don't want a frictionless one. I don't want one at all.
Don't want to think about it at all.
It just needs to be something I'm not concerned with. I mean, I know you think about your parents or something, like they won't even go venture near the mall unless it's like off hours and stuff, because they're afraid of the parking side of it. So kind of eliminating that as much as possible will, I think, always be the win, right? Just kind of reducing all the elements of it as possible. But we're providing something that everyone would skip at every opportunity. Yeah. And not do it any chance they got.
Right. Well, we're doing the dirty work. Exactly. We're down here in the trenches. Parking's in the basement. It's we're not always the first thing that's considered on a project, but very often it
becomes very important very quickly.
Absolutely. You do it wrong and people notice.
Oh yeah. Big time. Big time. So you were just talking about being in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Talk to us, give us some more insight on that. You have some really good thoughts on this too. So
yeah, Hawaii is a great market. I was on Oahu and Honolulu. They're growing. Sounds terrible. Yeah, it was the roughest week of work so far this year. It was beautiful, very friendly, beautiful people, and I think that that market, like others in the U.S. and other parts of the country, of the globe, of the world, I think they're sensitive to outside forces coming in and saying, you did this wrong, or you have the wrong approach, or you're not doing it right. So as a consultant, and I'm sure in your career as well as a provider, you've seen...
Just ask questions first.
Yeah, I'm here to listen. I'm here to be helpful in whatever way that means or is helpful to you. I don't have a predetermined agenda other than to sell my services if they're needed. So the comment I kept hearing last week on Oahu, in Honolulu from clients and people I was meeting with is Hawaii lags a few years behind the mainland as far as trends and implementation and what's going on. Many people feel that way, and I look at that as maybe a positive. It's not a negative thing. So now we've kind of...
They do get to skip some of the mistakes.
Exactly. They get to learn from our mistakes and implement, what is the best solution. They've, in downtown Waikiki, they've kept parking off of the arterial streets for years and just used those as drive lanes and throughput. And the parking, on-street parking, was on side streets or in some off-street garages, certainly a lot of hotels. A great idea. Now you're seeing that trend from cities pushing parking to the side streets so that your arterials can carry the congestion and the traffic levels that you're seeing, increased amount of Uber and Lyft vehicles on the road. And
I had lots of hard lessons in San Francisco when I was working there. Like, I didn't realize that at 3:00 they were lined up ready to tow vehicles. You think you got a few minutes?
Nope. That's a revenue source, but it keeps traffic moving too. So I was encouraged by what I was hearing in the Hawaii market on the islands from, certainly kind of waiting maybe to see how things shake out and then take the right approach. The other thing that I saw there was a lot of transportation demand management and TDM type of work where, and I think you've seen this now too, parking is no longer just about parking. Parking encompasses so many other forms of accessibility, not just from an ADA standpoint, but just from a transit mode standpoint. How are people accessing a site? I think hotels and airports and evening, nighttime entertainment uses have seen parking demand decrease, not everywhere, but in some places decrease. And that demand, a vehicle that would normally be parked at an event because someone drove to a concert or whatnot, now that person's getting dropped off by an Uber or Lyft or some percentage of people. So we're seeing more activity from the curb management, pickup, drop off side, and parking blends into that. And how do you still manage that? And is there an opportunity for revenue for a city?
I think the cost is going to go up on those sort of rideshare services and that sort of thing, because now cities are starting to put their hand out for all that.
Well, the regulations coming around, and they're also
LAX just did it, right? So it's like $6 or something now.
I think most airports are trying to charge at least a trip fee for the same rate as taxis. Not all, but I think most are, and that's a good approach. Some airports now, I think Uber came out in like 2012, 13 in San Francisco with their black car service.
It was black car for a while.
It was. And then Lyft was actually the first to use private cars. So then Uber borrowed that from them. Yeah. But, they've been around long enough. And certainly now with dockless bikes and scooters, we're seeing this increased demand on cities and universities and to some degree airports. And they're starting to get smarter about, from an ownership or public agency standpoint, what's the right way to approach this?
So are you helping municipalities with like dealing with some of those pieces as well?
Yeah, we do. We have a pretty big, a growing practice in new mobility services, transportation demand management.
Okay.
I mentioned earlier mechanical and robotic parking, certainly in dense areas, San Francisco, New York, parts of LA. We're seeing
I got a chance to work on that West Hollywood.
Yeah, that's right.
Garage there. That was.
Well,
I've had tours of the inside of it. I mean, it's
remarkable.
It really is.
Yeah.
And as soon as we can, I think they could have built it a lot cheaper.
Yes.
But our rules about having walkways and certain heights and things like that, and I think they could have. Once we can get over some of that stuff, I think that could actually be done at like half the cost that it's currently being done at.
Yeah. So that project, City of West Hollywood Automated Garage, came out to about $90,000 a stall on there. But that was for some land. And then also the city did an enclosed concrete structure. There have been others built in the LA area since then that are more of a steel frame with a mesh enclosure. So certainly that is a reduction in some of the construction
So what's the normal
costs.
cost for a space, like above ground, below ground?
My rule of thumb is really for structured parking. For surface parking, it depends on, any pricing depends on the market. And
sure.
But for Southern California, surface stall, probably $12,000, and that's not just the stall.
Is that a structure or just a surface lot?
Just surface lot, open air. And then it goes up, a structured stall, probably starting $30,000, $35,000. And then underground, if you go one level underground, that's probably $45,000 and then per stall. And then every level underground after that, you can add a premium for the cost of going underground.
So $90,000 is not crazy.
Not crazy, but it was, I think they have 250-ish stalls that they're providing there. So, not, I think it was more than they had hoped.
As much.
No, it's not 10X or anything like that. And I don't think if that facility was built today, I don't think it costs that much either. It's there have been efficiencies that have come along since then.
I like the steel frame with a mesh. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah. Or we're seeing other owners, we're kind of in this shaking out period, right? Sure. What's going to happen with, certainly mobile, everything's moving. There's a lot more going on mobile now. When are some self-driving cars, autonomous vehicles are on the road now and serving some markets, running in a closed loop. Downtown Vegas, I think, has one.
Really?
Yeah. Downtown Vegas along the...
So how many?
I think it's just one that runs in a continuous loop. I know the Sacramento
it's just
State
driving,
has
just trying to gather data, or is it actually providing a service?
It's providing a service, so it's a closed loop on a like a passenger shuttle system, so people can get on and off at different stops to move around. Waymo, I think, is live in Arizona with self-driving car.
I saw that, but
vehicle
it
technology.
does have a driver sitting in the.
There's still a driver in there, and so and even with the autonomous shuttles, like in downtown Vegas and Sacramento State and some other places, like there's still a driver on board typically, just in case, to take over control. But it's easier to manage a closed loop in a known environment than it is to put a self-driving car out onto the streets and actually let them try and determine what's going on around them and make choices appropriately.
I kind of thought that like the first place we would do that sort of thing is something like that, right? So it's a very confined environment.
Yeah.
And I really want to do it inside like one level of a garage.
Yeah.
Just go, okay, on this level, you can just get onto this level and just hop out and your car will go park on that level.
Yeah.
And then maybe pull it back to the entrance of the garage. Like, as soon as you come in the garage, here's where you get out of the car, and your car is a self-driving facility. It can go just kind of take care of itself. And you provide the parking guidance data and that sort of thing. And then hopefully that would make all that work. But that's kind of what I've always thought. I've talked about it before, but I mean, it's just
it's a great,
it's got to start small.
Yeah, you're right. And I think you're on the right path there. I mean, probably going to be 20 to 30 years still realistically before we see, if we ever see widespread self-driving car adoption.
So, I mean, at scale, I 100% agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'll start, really dense environments. But I'll tell you what, though, as much as you think about the driverless cars and you're almost like, looking forward to that future. I was in New York a few weeks ago. I mean, I don't know how it's going to pull it off.
It's chaos, yeah.
Anytime someone knew that was a self-driving car, they would just cut it off because they knew it would give way every time. I mean, it would be challenging.
Or I think we tend to have a utopian view of self-driving cars. The dystopian view would be...
Too many Hollywood movies.
Yeah, right. I read an article last week that said if every vehicle in New York was a self-driving car, if 10% of them were hacked and taken over and attacked or failed,
it's a real
or something,
possibility.
It'd create total gridlock throughout the entire city. And there's self-driving cars are great for cars, but there's still pedestrian concerns and considerations. And so one of the things that's really important when you talk about curb management is the sidewalk and the curb an appealing place for your citizens to spend time and, just to be? Are they walking into stores? Are they interacting with other people in the community? Is it a public space? I mean, we're running out of public spaces. So how are we using the street and everything that we have available to us, for the best and highest use in a way that's going to, serve the needs of local businesses and others. So I know we're kind of jumping around a lot.
No, it's fine. It's just...
But to complete the thought on self-driving cars, so that's really probably 20, 30 years away. So we have this interim period over the next couple of decades where we're still, I think people will continue to drive and park. And I don't think vehicle use or ownership is going away. It might be less appealing for certain groups than others. And, certainly as younger people grow older and have families and have different needs, maybe they'll start to adopt car ownership. I think a lot of that is based on just resources and what we have available to us to spend money on. Rent, probably, housing first priority.
It's probably important first.
Then maybe your phone, then a car. I don't know. But in this interim period over the next 20, 30 years, couple of decades, what can owners do who are building parking now? What can they do to prepare themselves for the future? So what we've seen, we were talking about automated garages and fully automated garages in a way to get vehicles into a smaller space.
Like the robotic garages? I mean,
It depends on density and the
Sure.
cost of land and the cost of building structured parking. If you have what space you have for,
I really think the next step on that would be to actually have facilities where because a lot of these cars can drive themselves right now.
yes, and park themselves.
And
yeah.
So if you could just set it up so you were building a smart garage that just enabled that piece of it.
Yep.
Like, so, I mean, I've talked about this on other shows, but sitting with Porsche, talking to those guys, like the amount of computing required for a car to go find an empty space in a garage on its own,
Yeah.
it's just impossible right now. They're never going to be able to put
Right.
that much horsepower in the car, after loss of GPS data and all these things, to be able to allow it to make those decisions. So if we could, that's what we got to build next.
Yeah.
Is the next smart garage in combination with a BMW or one of those guys that are like really pushing it, or Tesla or something. When Tesla's right here in LA, let's build a garage that enables that has all the tech inside of it that makes it possible for that car to do that easily.
Walker designed the garage for Tesla in Hawthorne, but didn't get that complex.
Let's go back and talk to him.
Well, maybe on the next one. We'll see. Certainly, they're heavily invested in battery technology.
Sure.
And as that decreases, same with camera technology. We've seen that come down and improve over time, which has made parking guidance more viable for some. Although
I'm still not a believer in camera guidance, but
yeah,
we'll see.
mean,
I'm
ultrasonic.
excited about what it offers.
It can do a lot, but I don't think people use the full functionality as well as they could. And like you said earlier, ultrasonic. What technology is good enough that's going to get us most of what we need? I think ultrasonic does a pretty good job of getting you what you need now.
And for the price point too. I mean, maybe it's not ultrasonic every single time, but whatever kind of inexpensive tech that gets you all the bells and whistles that you're really looking for.
Yeah. But camera-based guidance does help. I mean, you don't need it in every stall always. I mean, it's certainly not the right, and it can be costly, so it's not the right application for everyone. But it can help you with LPR. You can do zone-based detection, gateless detection, and enforcement.
So what I'll ask you is, do you know anybody doing that, like really doing that at scale?
No.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. I mean, how many times have we sold them, installed them, set them up, and you get a call like every few months going, what's our password to log into this?
You got to use it. And the operator has to use it, not just the owner. The operator's got to understand that.
I mean, it provides an amazing amount of data. You could control your employee parking by space, making sure they park in the right areas.
Yep.
There's everything you talked about, the virtual nesting, the per space pricing, all that stuff. But it's not happening yet.
Well, so to bring it back around, I think the opportunity is dynamic pricing, and how are you
definitely an opportunity there.
How are you pricing, as if you're at a location, whether that's airport, hotel, nightlife, if your parking is being impacted by Uber and Lyft usage or other changes in, transportation behavior of your populace. Airports, parking revenue is huge for airports in the United States. Maybe even their number one or number two revenue source for
I think every airport I've talked to, it's like the single largest individual revenue source on their books.
Absolutely. Not very common. And so if they're seeing the parking activity reduced because of Uber and Lyft, you get some fees from Uber and Lyft activity. But you're also competing with off-airport providers, local shuttle systems, whatever. So you got to be a little bit smarter about managing the existing parking supply that you have remaining. And so that's where I think there's a great opportunity for kind of yield management and using the parking product in a way that is still helpful and beneficial in generating revenue to the airport, but you just got to be a little bit smarter and more actively involved in the management of that product now.
So I think about LAX because like 9 times out of 10, I'm traveling farther and I have to go to LAX. I mean,
sure.
I'll go to Bob Hope every chance I get just because I can valet across the street and walk over. It's a beautiful
piece of cake.
thing. Yeah. But I'm sure you go to LAX because you live right here. I mean, they're not doing anything to market their parking. Like no one's like trying to turn that, from what I can tell, right? So as a consumer going there, I mean, if you look up parking online, you don't get LAX parking.
Yeah.
You get every off airport around there.
Yeah.
That's showing you what's available there. But I mean, if they just made the spaces available and like on cheap airport parking or something, I mean, you would just all of a sudden you'd shut down like every single off air around the whole place.
Yeah.
But I never have a problem finding a space when I actually park at LAX.
Yeah.
And the damn rate's gone. Well, it's like, what is it, like $35 a day now?
I don't know. I don't park there.
Yeah.
But they still have cashiers in the exit lanes.
They sure do. I mean, it's as old school as it gets.
Yeah. They're moving towards a pay on foot system. So they have some pay on foots installed now. I don't know if they're active yet, but
forget the pay on foots though. I mean, like just embracing technology for that facility, even on the front end, the advertising, the reservation side of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're talking airports are upset about being, infringed upon by the Lyfts and the Ubers and all that. But I mean, they're not doing anything to prevent it. Other than now they're just taxing those drop-offs that are coming to the airport instead of trying to actually create a product. I'm not trying to knock on a lot of the airports around here because there's a lot of people that want to do a lot of good things with it.
Sure.
But do you have an opinion on that, or is it?
I think they're
seem to be slower than adopt in Hawaii. I think.
Well, airports are publicly governed entities, and so there's a little bit of a slower process there. And
you would understand that a lot better than I would. I mean, it's your world, right?
Yeah, we get to live it. But it's interesting. Airports. The other thing that's interesting about airports is they're growing. Emplanements are up pretty much across the country as population grows. We're in a great economy. Travel and leisure travel is up. So the business that airports are doing is continues to grow. At least for the rest of this cycle. We'll see what happens. I don't know. Nobody knows when it's going to turn. But as airports are growing, they still have this need to provide not only parking, but all of these other access services. Sure. And so there are a few airports out there that are trying to be forward thinking. SFO certainly is one that comes to mind. They just built a new long-term parking garage. They're building a hotel in Terminal. They are expanding Terminal 1. They are extending the air train out to the new long-term parking garage.
See, that's awesome. I think you'd be more inclined to use those long-term lots if you didn't have to climb onto a bus or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like if it was just as simple as hopping on a train that was right there and dropped you off where you needed to go.
So SFO has this whole approach where they want to extend the passenger terminal experience into the garage, and
that's amazing.
It is. It's very forward thinking, and they have these big construction projects and this big master plan, so they're thinking through all of this. But the idea is as soon as as you park your car or pull into the garage, you're at the airport, you're part of the airport, your airport experience begins. And then, they want to reduce the anxiety of parking and getting you to the terminal and making your flight.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of great things. And there are others. That's not the only one. But SFO is doing something interesting where they've actually priced Uber and Lyft pickup and drop off on 2 tiers. So there's a higher rate to have access to the terminal curb, but for a reduced rate, you can get picked up or dropped off in the central terminal garage. They're trying to shift behavior and activity from the terminal curb, reduce the congestion.
That's a really smart way to do it.
It is. It has been very smart, and move that to they're doing it on the roof of their central terminal garage now. And so and there are other airports, they've actually removed parking stalls and replaced that with linear curb space in the parking garage in order to expedite that pickup drop-off activity. Yeah. The other thing I think that is going to happen with Uber and Lyft there, I don't know if you've ever used Uber or Lyft at a large concert or festival or event, but they have an event parking style. So rather than me requesting a ride, you being a driver, we get paired. I have to find you in all of the chaos and everything that's going on.
People just roll up and there's like a queue?
It's like a first come, first serve.
Really?
So I would enter my destination on the app. I get a code. I just jump into the next vehicle available the driver enters my code, and then we're paired then. So that's not as much of the driving around trying to find you. What corner are you on? What shirt are you wearing?
You ever done that in New York? That's pain.
I'm sure it's crazy and probably really dangerous at times too.
Well, they're stopping where they shouldn't and stuff.
Well, and I've spoken with the SFMTA enforcement folks, and they issue tickets to Uber and Lyft drivers for being double parked, and they've got a few pilots there now where they've not only moved parking off of the main arterial route, but they've moved Uber and Lyft pickup and drop off activity off of that main street as well. So on Market and Valencia streets, you can't get in an Uber or Lyft. It's geo-fenced and it won't allow you to do that. So they direct that pickup activity to a side street where it's a little less congested. That, maybe
that's really
quicker.
Smart.
Very smart. Very smart. But they've lived with it for 6 years.
Sure,
so now they're coming back
mature.
and they're evolving and beginning to understand how it works. I think they've done studies that said at peak times, 20% or more of the activity on the street is from Uber and Lyft cars, just adding to congestion. Yeah.
It seems like every car drives by has an Uber or Lyft sticker on it these days, but yeah.
Well, yeah, and they might not be in service, but it could be a driver
sure.
that's just, commuting to their normal job, and maybe they drive after work or something.
That's encouraging. It sounds like people are doing some things to embrace it.
Yeah.
I wonder if when SFO builds that extension of that terminal, that they'll actually move the Uber Lyft out to the long-term lot, because that seems like there's a train out there. Why wouldn't you?
That has been part of the discussion. The airport did move the driver staging area to off airport in order to allow for more approximate parking and use of the areas closer to the terminal. So there's a lot going on that's affecting parking now, and so
sure.
But there are ways to plan and to have an appropriate response and move forward to the future.
It's interesting. I feel like with all the different variables in play now, like the need and the role to have a consultant is even more important now than it's probably ever has been in the entire time I've been in the industry.
Yeah, things can move pretty quick.
10 years ago, it wasn't that complicated. I mean,
no, yeah.
It's like, you can accept credit. People were still deciding whether they were going to accept credit cards or not. I mean, it was a much different conversation than it is today.
It is. It's complicated, but there are a lot of resources out there, and a lot of people willing to help, and a lot of knowledgeable
sure.
individuals, even from the vendor and provider side. So, I think, you don't want to have decision paralysis to the point where you do nothing. You want to be able to move forward and have an appropriate path forward. And so a lot of what we do at Walker is just listening to the client, understanding
sure.
their needs, doing the stakeholder outreach, and then just bringing back a primary recommendation to them that says, all right, the next 5-10 years, this is what we see you needing. This is what we think you'll need and might be helpful. Now, that said, every couple of years or every year, there's a new product or feature to the market that's this age of disruption and everything that's going on. Now, a lot of these new providers, I think, are very viable and relevant, and so it's just waiting to see who they catch on with and who embraces them. And there's
it's interesting when you look at kind of the businesses that maybe 10 years ago they were bringing something innovative to the market. You fast forward those 10 years and now they're just trying to keep things the way they were for so long, and they're if it was sports, you'd think of it differently, right? You get some hot 24-year-old coming in tearing up the game. Fast forward, he's like 40. It's like, yeah, you should retire now. You did your thing. But in business and technology, you have the opportunity to reinvent yourself, right? So you can be this kind of young, innovative thing, and then you can do it again. Yeah. And it seems like some of these large incumbent organizations just kind of hunker down on what they've done. And then I think they're just trying to keep things status quo a lot. So
Well, it
prevent the change.
Yeah. Well, it's difficult to manage change, especially as the industry is changing around us. We were talking earlier, 15 years ago, you might have one or two devices that are connected to the internet. Now every device is internet enabled and connected. And so it's not just about managing, does the gate open and close? Does the pay on foot machine accept a credit card? Does the entry device issue a ticket? It's also about managing the data and the flow and how the communication
just
piece is working.
The information that gets collected too, right? 'Cause that's people are trying to throttle that as well.
Yeah. Or you get hacked and someone holds your data hostage for a feed in order to release it. So there's all kinds.
It's crazy that happens.
It is nuts. Yeah. It's nuts.
I have another podcast that we do, and it's more of a fun one, but we had this whole segment on just like disruptive technology stuff. And like one of the crazy examples that came up in the room was like, I had a gym membership. My wife had a gym membership.
Yep.
And then we bought a Peloton bike. And then both the gym memberships got canceled. And now for the price of one of those, now for the price of like half of like one of the gym memberships, we now have a service that's online and probably are using it more because it's in-house and there's space and all that. And my neighbor did the same thing, and it was just like this between our street, I think we had counted like 5 gym memberships got canceled.
Wow.
And only 2 bikes were purchased.
Yeah.
So,
well, gyms aren't my favorite place to be. I'd rather be outside. But so with the Peloton bikes, how does that work? You can choose like a class and a
it's
video to watch, or
so you have their entire library. So everything they ever do gets recorded.
Okay.
So you can choose, an instructor or whatever you like, and do like 10 of their classes that they've recorded over the last couple of years, and then there's live classes you can join.
Great.
But it's everything from boot camp to yoga to meditation to everything is done. So it's through the app and through the bike and everything. So we love it. It's you get to do all kinds of cool stuff on it, and it's social and competitive. With your friends.
Okay. So you keep running totals on who's your mile speeds and stuff
if you're
like that?
connected to someone on through the app,
okay.
Then all of a sudden everyone sees what everyone's doing.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden it's like, I've always been terrible at being accountable to myself, but when it came to being accountable to others, you do it, right?
Yeah.
So every time you ever had a partner that you were like going to the gym with, or someone that you were teamed up with to do it, like my neighbor and I used to ride mountain bikes, and
cool.
We're kind of digressing off of parking here.
Yeah,
but,
that's all right.
Just having to go do that with him would, knowing that I didn't want to be the one that sent the text message at 5:30 going, I want to ride today. So you end up doing it more, so that it kind of brings a little bit of that influence to exercising, which is good.
Yeah.
Anyway, disruption, right?
It is, but there's still a human element, and I think to bring it back to parking, I think technology can be helpful and it can serve a purpose, but it doesn't do everything. At some point, you still need someone to talk to, or you still need someone observing and understanding what's going on, ground truth type of positioning.
Just having somebody to step in and go, okay, I'm going to help you.
Yeah. Just a little empathy and saying, we messed up. I'm sorry, but let me fix this for you.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, hey, this has been a great chat.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. It was very informative, and I look forward to having you on the show again. That'll be fantastic.
Thank you, Lester, and thank you, Parker X, and I'm here whenever you need me.
That's awesome. So
thank you.
If someone wants to reach out to you, is there a good way to contact you? Or
yeah, absolutely. So I'm on Twitter at Parking Master, and then
nice.
Yep, that's a fun handle. I try and stay current on current events and different interesting things that are going around. WalkerConsultants.com is the Walker website, and then my email is jwicks@WalkerConsultants.com.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Lester.
All right.
Thank you.
Hey, so thank you very much for listening. If you made it through this far, I really appreciate it. We're very excited to be bringing this to the industry. There's not really anything else like it. Once again, this is Lester Mascon. Name of the podcast is Parker X. Please like it. Please share it. That means the world. Please share it and rate it and tell us what you think of the show. We're going to try to keep doing a bunch of these, and your comments and feedback's really important. Also, if anyone else would like to be on the show, please drop me a line, and we'll be happy to get something put together. Thanks.